would like to offer up a university land acknowledgement, acknowledging Hawaii as an indigenous space, whose original people, the Kanaka Maoli, have shaped Hawaii in a sustainable way that allows us to enjoy her many gifts today. And for this, we are truly grateful. The aina on which we sit is located on the ahupua'a of Waikiki, on the mokupuni of Oahu in the Pai'aina of Hawaii. That is, of course, where I sit. I would love for you who are here in the audience to make note of where you are joining us from. You know, what is your earth or water? But the series Careers in Peacebuilding is really about helping us all to remember that positive peace building work is active and that it is multifaceted, that we all have an opportunity to impact our communities, our environments, our organizations, our nations, and our world in positive, peaceful ways through activating our resources, our leadership, our ingenuity, our networks. And in order to do this, we also have to have personal resilience. So today we will be talking about how to uplift community source solutions and voices. We want to think about frontline communities, Indigenous and women's leadership, voices perhaps that have not been recognized as the powerful activators of solution that they are. So voices that have perhaps been ignored or in the shadows. For instance, we have been thinking a lot just now after COP27 about gender parity with respect to climate work. We see that women's leadership is strong and that countries that uplift women or communities that uplift women are more resilient, and women are conducting powerful research. They're composing, beautiful collaborative synergies. They are impacting policy. They are solutionary, and they're making change by sharing resources and healing systemic injustice and building a more inclusive peace. So we are going to take a look at women today, but we're also going to take a look at community more broadly. So without delay, I'd like to introduce our guest, Dr. Mariko Gakiya. She is a very multifaceted, accomplished individual, worldly, but also nuanced in her thinking. She takes an innovative approach to leadership education and social entrepreneurship. She puts a focus on human resilience and well-being, and she's particularly interested in how the physical and psychosocial environment shapes human development and well-being. So her work is focused on leadership and resilience of vulnerable populations, especially women. She's interested in issues around gender equality, poverty reduction, empowerment, with the goal of creating healthy ecosystems based on humanistic, moral, and ethical principles. She serves on the executive boards of several organizations and advises leaders of international development organizations, foundations, think tanks, higher education institutions, corporations, and universities. She's founding faculty director of the Global Leadership Program for the Graduate School of Medicine at the University of Tokyo, and is currently a visiting professor at Doshisha Women's College of Liberal Arts. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, Doshisha, but she earned a doctorate degree in administration, planning, and social policy and education at Harvard University after postgraduate work at the University of Oxford. So this is an incredible woman with a very lively mind. Welcome, Dr. Mariko.
Well, thank you very much, Amaya and Jose, for a very kind and a warm welcome. And good afternoon and good morning, perhaps, and good evening, everyone. People are perhaps tuning in from around the world. And I'm very touched by Jose Amaya's introduction. Are we living in the world that, yes, it's a tremendous challenges. Every morning when you get up, what do you hear? What do you listen? What drives you? to lead your life? It's a really compound question, and the reaction that we all take in. I am nothing new and then nothing special. My life, it's really given enormous opportunity to live different parts of the world, and then to appreciate incredible wisdom and the traditional values that we can put the light on, and to make sure that we harness that and embrace our way of life, to critically think about where we want to go for our future building. And yes, in trying to accommodate Maya's question about community and the personal engagement and well-being, and then I see my colleague, Nancy Board, that I'm also helping this organization, Women's Leadership, and then health. Let me echo that firsthand. My core input is to really bring wholeness into our own self-development, which is to focus on the well-being of ourselves, our community, and then our ecosystem. That it's so critical. We cannot start only looking at what we can provide the service to. Yes, we are in service, but if we don't take a look at our own self, inner self, I think we are not utilizing whole aspect of what we can offer. I
Thank
can
you.
go on. Yes. So
Yes,
go on.
I appreciate that you've set us up nicely to introduce the topics of leadership as well as personal peace and resilience. I think perhaps I'd like to first, though, have you just speak a little more about what you're doing in your professional and personal life to build peace, and include in that, what is your definition of peace and peace building? And, how does this look in terms of daily life around us? How does your definition of peace in action manifest itself, if you will?
Okay. Thank you, Maya. It's a big question, but it has been in my mind in the last, so to say, in a few decades, once I became very alert about our global issues, which is systemic, yes, but it's really rooted in our human capacity, that we have a certain way to digest the information, but it's being looking at a certain way that we are forgetting about what as a collective action can do. So let me state first, let me put it in the context, because we have to frame it so that the audience can understand it, what I'm saying. My definition of peace is really the combination of the both our inner self and then our outer self, and then understanding own identity, where our shadow also bringing our mind and then our action to the daily life. So we have to have a very healthy way of examining ourselves, where we want to go, and then where my unconscious biases. Maya is very good at teaching us where our blind spots are, and then make sure that we need to deal with all this different shadow or darkness, so that we can, healthy way we can take our thinking and then our goal, envision the future to, collectively bring to the action, and then to make sure that the peace is really start from from your own life. And it didn't say that we listen very often about random act of kindness. Where can we start from dealing with your own health, dealing with your own mental health issues, but to really connect to people surround you. So my work currently, after Corona or during Corona, I had a chance to come back to Japan, and then to think about where we are. I spent my last few decades mainly in the US, UK, and then a few years in Africa, and then different parts in Europe. So bulk of my time, my formative years, I spent in the West. But this corona pandemic has given me an enormous opportunity to reflect myself and where we want to go in terms of my professional practice, which I'm currently focusing on my teaching. I'm teaching at the university. I teach at the Japan's Women's College because the women's leadership for younger generation is very critical. And then I also teach online in Boston and in other places in Tokyo, so I try to combine Forrest's latest research finding of what we can do to understand human capacity. Basically, I'm very interested in how we can better understand the social, global, economic, environmental issues using the latest science and to trying to bring people to develop innovative approach. So innovation and how can we really assess the impact, innovation, impact, and then inclusion. The more we include the people, yes, there are a better solution and better impact. I can talk on and on about some research, but that's something that the angle that I'm taking at the moment, and make sure that I reach out to the people who are around me and connecting people so that we are empowered and then we can share our practices. Nobody is alone. We are living together in this earth to make sure that we protect and then sustain the future.
Thank you. I appreciate your emphasis on our connectedness, but also your connecting of psychology and personal leadership and behavior. There is embedded there, of course, the need to address trauma and conflict obviously can lead to post-traumatic growth, but it can also lead to PTSD, and a lot of the communities that we're seeking to illuminate, are communities that have faced significant conflict, struggle, and oppression. So can you tell us a little bit about, what excites you in terms of a trauma-informed approach, or perhaps, maybe I should say a strength-based approach, emerging from the trauma, but how do we have to wrestle with the shadows?
Yes, this is really timely. After COVID, so many research has been showing that during the corona, and what's distinguished between more democratic, I won't say feminist, but women-led organization versus formerly typical male-led organization, who are effective, who are impactful, who actually being supported by their workers. There are so many research that's been going on. HBS did most impactful large sample studies. If you want to know the methodology, you can tell me later, but the baseline is that the women are more effective, especially dealing with the crisis. So crisis management for women, it's incredibly effective because women are better leaders to reach out, and then they have experienced many different, in a way, trauma or struggle in life. And so they have been, multitasking, and then they have a better way to understand where people are coming from, and then trying to sympathize, empathetic leadership and in style, and then try to bring that different notion of where people are coming from, what skills are relevant for certain tasks. So they have systematic way to reach out and bringing people together to make sure that they have a collective action to achieve. So the female has an enormous talent. But let me emphasize that. The current research has shown that post-traumatic, the experiences, it's very critical to defining where you want to go. So, classic study, the Warren Bennett study about the, crucible moment. Once you experience such a transformational experiences, and then the current, the corona situation also say that the people who have very life-threatening from your family member or loved one or something really defines you, what your, core values, and then how you want to live your life. That is a very catalytic, a pivotal moment for individual to really centered about your action and your life course. So actually, yes, it's a very challenging time to go through the traumatic experiences, but there are ways that there are so many different methodology has been done. I can name that shadow work has been done by Norma Burton and then Max Kraut, applied in the political leadership style and so on. And then so using the indigenous wisdom. So shadow work and then going through overcoming the trauma is actually incredibly powerful way to build your personal leadership, personal development, looking at the holistic view and the steps moving forward, your direction, and to make sure that that touched upon basis of peace building, because peace building is not only to look at the negotiating conflict resolution, but a peace is to make sure that the practice of business, practice of daily life that is really bringing inclusive and then to really respect each other's differences. So it has a huge undertake and an impact on our capacity to understand that it's not a detrimental or the process that happens to people's life, but how we can overcome, how we see challenging a time that is coming to you, but we have a whole holding environment, the different tools, different methodology and the therapy, so that we can help individual to overcome. So it's a very important component at the moment for leadership practice and then leadership development.
Thank you. Yes, I have been inspired lately by a lot of somatic therapies and ways that we can do embodied social justice, to heal the individual body and the collective body. Prentice Hemphill, who was here for a time, has a wonderful podcast on the subject. And someone just sent to me the myth of normal. Gabor Mate, I'm not sure if you know that, but it's a trauma, illness, and healing in a toxic culture. And one of the things that is shared here is that, as you have just emphasized, it requires that we courageously wrestle with our own traumas, of having a reflective practice, but also being able to have and engage in robust self-care as we're doing the difficult and uncomfortable work of moving through our trauma. We have to also not only find self-compassion, but also engage, I think, in robust self-protection to ensure that we don't plummet to a place of deep vulnerability. So I wanted you to speak about today in Japan, and what is the significance of today, and how is it that we should, as we are doing this important work of healing, in order to better serve and lead, what must we do to protect ourselves and others?
Thank you, Maya. That's the gift you have. You are very good, synthesizer. And then so much that I want to share. Thank you, Maya and Jose, and then also listeners. Today is a significant day in Japan, day to appreciate our life. So it's called Day of Life. That today is a very symbolic day. 60 years ago, the government has established a hotline for the people who are trying to end their life, but there is a way that people can come and get the help. So what is very significant, this, the symbolic recognition day, it's that during the Corona last 2 years, the suicide rate, especially among women, has skyrocketed in Japan. The very vulnerable population, when you look at any gender, gap indication among all these, different statistical analysis showing that the Japanese women has been very skewed toward economic vulnerability and then social, injustice, inequality issues. So the Corona period was very tough. Lots of women lost a job and then no place to live and go, and lots of people. The number is about 10,000, but when you look at the really trajectory of where it is going, and people are, in the medical facilities and so on, it's very troublesome. So today it's the day that we must reach out to people and then recognize everybody has a moment of silence that we need to care for each other and to make sure that this is nothing the shame or being stigmatized. This is to really for us to recognize everybody needs to go through that. Therefore, post-traumatic approach for healing is very critical for us. Make sure that there are places that we can go and then get the help, and then we are there to help. And also, really building the trust. We are there. Isn't it? We learn everybody that it's not something that you provide. You deal with people, but how we make others people feel, that is more critical for us to make sure that the emotional intelligence or whatever we call it in academia or any practice, that we are human beings. That we have a head and a heart and a mind, all that different, capabilities that we need to make sure that we intact with the whole development. So it's incredible way that women are very good at it, understanding even, during the traumatic cycle of process of healing, but to take that essence, lessons learned, apply to new, situation. So that it's to take that context to put into the vision. So, where we can help each other. I'm very sure that Maya and then Jose gonna tackle into the next phase of bringing a different event. So throughout the sequential process of our life, and then also the process, we will find the way moving forward. So basically, I wanted to really echo and then also, provide the vision for the future. Whatever happens, and then, traumatic experiences, there are hope, the light at the tunnel. Make sure that we bring people, and then if you want to reach out to me, or I have other my colleagues actually provide all this healing and traumatic experience to overcome. There are many methodologies, so I will be happy to provide that.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I'm hearing you say also that part of the solution is having voice, being able to tell our stories, being seen, being heard, being acknowledged by one another, that connection between individuals, but also between cultures and communities. You have, speaking of brave, really force yourself to be uncomfortable by living in places where you felt different and isolated. I think about your time in Oxford, your time at Harvard, your time in Africa. We have a Peace Corps prep certificate at the Matsunaga Institute for Peace, and we work with the Peace Corps. You also have some Peace Corps experiences. I want you to share with us a little, if you would, your experiences as a sojourner, as a traveler. Why is that critical? The connections that you formed and the learning and family building that you pursued during, your journey.
Wow, Maya, that's really profound. It's really touches of my, my entire life in terms of where I started, why I have pursued the past, which is very unusual. But I'm very blessed that there are always people to help me and then guided me. So let me start from where I was born and raised. I was born and raised in Okinawa. And that time, we are talking about the 80s, Japanese economy was boosting. And then I moved to Hawaii to learn English, where I completed my bachelor's degree. And so I have a tremendous appreciation of looking at and preserving the culture, tradition of Hawaii, native islanders and then the Pacific islanders that, they are brought out by British colonies all over the world, but really, in a way, crafting, but really preserving their virtue of appreciating the nature, which I wasn't so aware. I was so ignorant up to maybe my, my PhD period. But the more I studied and the more I lived in different country and in a continent, but I found human resiliency and the conditions and an amazing capacity when I lived in Africa. And also different parts of the I really traveled around the world. More I recognize and more I see, I learned oppressed people or people who are in a vulnerable population has an enormous courage to forgive what happened to their life. They have enormous skills for human minds to open up and then very open-hearted and make sure that the toughness, sometimes it's a violent act that comes to their life, but always trying to see the future, work toward the human future generation, make sure that it will end the violence that no longer sustained and no longer they can take it, but to really put it into the new horizon of constructing the new community that is really resilient, but make sure that the stable peace will come. So for example, when I was in my 20s, I was given a very honorable position to be a policy advisor to the minister of nation. And then I was very fortunate to meet Nelson Mandela. He was alive, incredible leader, such a oppressed regime. And then his way of forgiving and then really working so hard to find some common ground, common core for healing first, but to develop the reconciliation effort, but something common, platform so that both sides can come. So I really learned that no matter what very sexy word, academic, the theory or system, the combination of both we can bring. Bottom line is understanding the people, and then how we can bring people, and then how we see the impact on people. So for me, it was always centered around focusing on the people, and then how we can give the vision and then the value and then the mission of the the life and the society, but really to also, this is the shadow part, because we can always talk about the brightness and then the positive side, but there is always other very important side of darkness, trauma, and then the shadow, but forgiveness. The forgiveness is really coming from, if you are healthy enough to focus on the future, you will find the pathway, pipeline, to make sure that you have the capacity to understand and then reach out. The higher you go, the position, you have to, bow lower There's a many sayings say that. So I'm in my life, I try to reach out to my student and try to even say what is happening to you. So whoever comes to my life, I try to be bold, because that's something that I am very comfortable with. Some way that the coping strategy or whatever the name that the theoretical framework that can teach you. But I believe in people, basically. I believe in people, and then the struggle that comes, but we go through together. So that's my approach. And then I try to really focus on, the Matsunaga Institute. It's a very perfect platform to really bring the interdisciplinary, platform and approach. But that is to really understand different values, a different way of thinking that we acknowledge, and then we try to, shed the light on that aspect of traditional wisdom. So I'm very always interested. My work starts from curiosity. So I'm trying to find what drives me, and then what can I learn? Incredible female leader who are resilient is that they are enormously good at learning something new, and then excited, and then the very people-oriented people. That's something that I also value. And I see some of my students are tuning in. I'm very happy that that's my work. Yes, my professional life, I connect with the younger generation. My private life, personal life, I deal with elderly care. So I really provide service, or my mother, 80s, and my relatives, and then my American family in the 90s, and some 100 years old. So I try to balance it out, the different generational, the living. So that's something that I always put the human well-being at the core of my work, and then my personal life that I get the energy from.
Thank you so much. There was a lot in what you just said that resonates with me, and I'm sure others. When you were talking about those who have suffered and struggled under oppression after forgiveness, usually being the most resilient people, I was reminded of that quote by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, which I pulled up, which I love. The most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and deep loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen, and she indicates that, it requires enormous work and commitment, but there is such gorgeous and fruitful possibility as we emerge from, the mud. No mud, no lotus, right?
Perfect.
I also love what you said about curiosity, because I have always believed that curiosity is something we need to see and cultivate in young people. It is the antidote to despair in ourselves. If we are curious about another, we're not fearful of them. When we're curious, then we have always an attitude of possibility, hopefulness, and moving forward. Think about what we might uncover, what we might disclose, what we might unearth in ourselves even. So I love that you said that curiosity is the source and the wellspring for you. And finally, I wanted to speak to, this notion of intergenerational duet that you have reminded us is so important. That is one kind of diversity that we don't talk about enough. I think, how we can nurture understanding, exploration, collaboration between the generations. But I do want to talk about diversity in general. Obviously, for healthy communities, as we build the beloved community, we have to pay attention to diversity and equity and inclusion, and for not just for the sake of justice, but because diverse communities will offer varied creative solutions and innovation. So tell us more about why gender, economic, ethnic, and other forms of diversity are so crucial to developing the partnerships between private, public, and NGOs, and to strengthen peace-related activities. can speak to it in your own, about your experiences and observations.
Okay, thank you. If it's executive education and talking to the CEO or pipeline of future leaders, the content will be very different. But I'm talking from my own experiences, and then also connecting to the people who are actually working in a local community. Diversity and equity, inclusion, it's just indispensable factors, because it's not only the ethnic or class or background differences. Every individual has a way of taking the information and then to channel through what it means to apply to their life, and then the solution that individual can take and then impacting and bringing to the betterment of their situation is all different. It's not a one single size will fit all, that metaphor. So and then coming to other example, corporation, you can look at any statistic, any research, it shows that the more diverse background and more engaged, and if the company put more money into education, education meaning communication to all different aspects of learning, the profit, and then the more engagement and the more commitment for success will increase. It's doubled actually. 2.4, it's the actual number, depending on the industry, but that it's something that it's also very critical for corruption issues. So, there are so many research has been done, and it's, I don't know how much detail you wanna get, but basically that because the magnitude of issues are so gigantic. Look at the environmental issue. Maya mentioned about COP27. If we don't act together, if we don't reach out to the people, this climate situation gonna really it's gonna really impact in the detrimental way. So the more we reach out to the people to collectively act, the process itself is so visible, and then you really see the impact, and then it's much more futuristic, and then I won't say easy, but you see the meaning of it. So it's always trying to put the meaning of that sense making. How can you really develop the meaning making process more viable and then the most impactful, and then the people are committed for the better solution. So when you think about that, what is fair? What is fair for everybody? Because some people are very fed up with the politics, and then some people are so divided, but what we really do care. So that's something that is very important, that we also trying to sympathize and then empathize with people in completely opposite side. We have to reach out, and it's very uncomfortable, but don't rush. I think that's the the research show that spend more time, give a time, and then to reach out, and then make sure that there is a goal that you have to really put on. There is an ikigai, how you develop your life to have a goal or vision. Ikigai is actually, I didn't know, developed in the small village in Okinawa, where female women lived average like 95 or 100 years. And then I just read all this literature when I was like 20 years old also. And then I just happened to, go there just a few months ago. It was so incredibly resilient community. They went through all the wars and terrible occupation under Japan and other places, but their commitment to make sure that they help each other and they overcome each other. And then this village is actually the poorest village within Okinawa. So there is no, resources, So what they have done is that, develop their needs and then make sure that, where they sustain and then look at the talent, So if you Google Ikigai, that's the, like one of the, the framework that you can take a look.
So Ikigai is sort of like, it's a it's what motivates us. It's what gives us a sense of purpose, finding our unique pathway and fulfillment, right? So crafting a life of purpose.
And it'd be very practical also.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you. Well, audience, I and Facebook audience as well. I think you are welcome to add questions, and Jose will put the Facebook questions, send them to me as well. And if you're here in chat, by all means, share your questions. And I just have one more question myself. You mentioned, yes, we both talked about environmental concerns. A lot of traditional and indigenous wisdom is used to kind of think about how to live in greater connection with and, you know, to land and reframe the elements of nature as, you know, as belonging to us, part of us, connected to us. They are ancestors and so forth. And so I wanted you to talk a little bit about this balance, I think, between, you know, sort of indigenous and traditional wisdom and what it has to teach us about healing and moving forward towards healthy and equitable world. But also the indigenous futures, you know, so sort of futures thinking and design thinking and innovation for peace and justice. So how do we find that balance, and how do you see the value of blending indigenous and futures thinking?
So technically, Maya, you know, I can go on the very talking about the conceptual and a philosophical way to the focus or bringing more or visualize and then to publicize what the native, you know, traditional wisdom can help us. You know, that's another angle we can talk, but a practical way, you know, because there are so many platforms. You know, when you really teach or you look at the UN Global Compact, that is to really focus on the business practices, focusing on the human rights, labor issues, and the environment, and so on. And there is a very good, it's a program focusing on, you know, change makers, or, you know, you name it, all these, you know, disruptors and innovators. I would really, you know, echo that. And I haven't seen more or even handful example of some of the innovation that is happening in the you know, native land. You know, there are so many interesting work has been done, but we need to make sure that you know, it's not a segregated portion of the world that they're practicing their innovation. You know, their way of doing. It's part of our process of building the new you know, environmental project. So I think we need to shed light on more on their practice, and then make sure that we kind of put their work in the mainstream of what we do. I think it's very important that you know, we give a fair credit, because lots of you know, when you look at the academic research and then others, you know, medicine well or other stuff, that there are lots of things that has been borrowed, but they are not have been credited. So I think we need to have a collective action that you know, make sure that we bring them and then showcase them, and then make sure that it's connected to our practice. That is something that I have been really thinking about. How can we really have, again, your original question about how can we, you know, measure social justice? How can we have a measurable and an impactful affair, the ground operation, looking at the peace building? So I will start from, you know, focusing on the people who are on the ground, because the younger people, they are really trying to understand why this math is happening? What's the causality of it? I think it's a really perfect case study to understand why we didn't put so much, emphasis on those practices, but we can learn from that. The lesson to be learned, and then I think we can craft it in a way that's the some of the very critical context that we can take it to improve the future.
Yes, I was also so pleased by the loss and damage fund that
Yes,
came
exactly.
out of COP27 in acknowledgement and in hopeful reparations soon granted to communities that have been hit hard by climate disaster. And I feel like there's some real potential there for balancing and recognition, but also the uplifting of those solutions for real resilience that are embedded in a lot of these communities, the G77 especially. Anyway, we have a question here I want to get to from Zephanie. She writes, thank you so much for all the sound wisdom and advice. Thinking more about peace within, with others, and in harmony, support of our communities. Is there anything more you'd like to add about personal resilience and the resolve that it takes to stay motivated, to stay inspired, and to get back into the flow of ikigai when we are overcome with challenges, frustrations, and deep concern for the world around us?
Yes, isn't it sometimes too heavy, and then it just you feel that too much to foreseeing the brightness. When that happens, I think again, go back to the nature. I always kind of tell myself, in Hawaii too, when I lived, I was very young in my teens. So, and then also, south part of Japan, but I lived to also, bulk of my time in the Boston area. So hurricane, tornadoes, and then, in Hawaii, lots of typhoon. No, they still come. I don't know. Think about the analogy. Touch bases with nature. That's why indigenous wisdom is very critical. What do they teach? I still remember when I was little, when the typhoon or tornado comes, when it's approaching to you in a strong wind and then rain and it's very chaotic, you don't know what's going to happen to your life. But when you are just smashed in the eyes of a typhoon, a tornado, what happened? It's very quiet. You don't know what is really happening. So that's the moment that here we go. You get the energy, and then you see what is really possible in your life. After tornado and the typhoon leaves, what brings your life? Big, beautiful sunshine, isn't it? The rainbow. So that's the chemistry that all this different variety of colors combination. When you look at it, what do you see? Incredible seasonal brightness. When the national park hit, when was it? A few decades ago, everything was destroyed and burned, and everybody saw. Lots of scientists that it's finished. It will never be like before. But look at it. Only a few years after, new seeds, new greens came, and then you started to see. So Mother Earth is incredibly resilient. And then that is giving us so much possibilities. Our work is to make impossible possible. And then when you are stuck, go to the Maya's website and then really join her activities. She has a very, interesting program, like environment, bringing the younger generation. I was very touched. I always talk to my student about, her program. The young people in her program has enormous ideas and creativity for solution. So something that talk to the people who are usually out of your bound. So that's something that the touch with the basis of the nature, and that's why it's diversity. It's to really talk to the different sites, different background of people, and then make sure every month or every year you learn something completely different field and expand your network. So when we were told to expand the network, social network, we are so stifled within our small box. But that's, if you get out, you will always find incredible magnitude of change, incredible capacity, the power of wisdom. That is something that people cannot take away, and then you just appreciate the friends that you found, and then you will be just delighted.
Thank you. Yes, this is a time when we have been enclosed in small spaces, and the powerful opportunity exists now for us to throw the windows open, right? And to reconnect, to grasp hands. And you're reminding us that spaciousness that we might discover can really help with personal resilience. I did start a Shinrin Yoku and forest bathing. So in Japan, as I understand it, many physicians are now prescribing forest bathing. And for those of you who have not heard of it, it doesn't involve bathing or nakedness. It's just going into the forest and connecting with nature, as Dr. Mariko is sharing with us, this idea of being mindfully present, of finding the miracles and the gifts that are so abundant, of having a sense of wonder for the very little ant that's on the blade of grass, or looking up at the sky through the trees, or watching things in motion and feeling a healing on a cellular level of the hurts that you face, and recognizing the resilience that she speaks of. So that's certainly those mindful practices that do connect and remind us of our responsibility to one another and to the Aina itself. To the land, it's really critical. Okay, so here we have Jill Leilani says, aloha mai kako. Mahalo for this offering and your inspiration during a particularly polarized time. Self-love and care is what sprouts from the muddy waters of despair, denial, and depression. I recently wrote a poem, I Begin, and I'll send it to Jose, and maybe he can facilitate its distribution. From my heart to all of yours. Aloha ke kahi I ke kahi. Thank you so much, Jill, for sharing that. And please, any of you, by all means, do place in the chat your ideas for personal resilience and self-care beyond, the connection with nature, connection with one another, the community work and service. We spend a lot of time here in the lo'i, in the farms, in the fish ponds, in the honu ponds, the turtle ponds, right? But not all of you are here in Hawaii, so please let us know where you're spending time for personal resilience. How are you activating your internal strength? Share with us. Okay, so ATT states, peace building is a new concept to me. Please elaborate more on how this concept is connected with well-being, and is it only applicable after traumatic events? So yeah, I'll let you start with that.
Me? Okay. Or ATT? Sorry.
So yeah, so I mean, I'll begin, Dr. Mariko, and then you please can add to it. But yeah, peace building, as we see it, is positive peace building. So we distinguish between negative peace and positive peace. Negative peace is not negative; it's simply the absence of acute or violent conflict, right? It's so. Cold War is negative peace. If you have two roommates and they're mad at each other, they're not talking, but they're not yelling at each other. Those things are negative peace building actions. But positive peace is the presence of relationship, of understanding, of compassion, of justice and human rights, and positive peace building is really about how do we activate. It's peace in action. So it's not simply a disposition or a mental state, but it is about our contributions towards building, what MLK called the beloved community, right? And Auntie Pua Burgess does a lot of work in Waianae and on our island on building beloved community. And it's all about positive peace building. And the idea is that because positive peace building is presence, then there's so many ways to get involved, to enter the stream, to choose to participate and to be an upstander, right? And it's definitely not just after traumatic events, but it's about individual as well as collective resilience. So we talk a lot about building peace within and between and in service, personal peace, interpersonal peace, and service to others. But Dr. Mariko, would you like to add anything to that question?
Thank you. Yes, I resonate with what the Maya said. When you look at the entire human capacity, human development, or really focus on the adult development, perhaps at the present moment, it's here. It's the development that you have plateaued, but we still have a life to live. Where we want to go, you go like that. That's the definition of where you want to go. We have a tremendous capacity to grow further. So when you look at the growth trajectory, so it is very important for us to where we want to go, how you want to set your vision. So when we talk about the peace building, it's inner peace, and then you really directing your loved one or the people who care, and then we treat people in a way we dignify, and then we appreciate that. Small act of random kindness will really, cascade and then expand. And then and then you develop the community that is really, social capital is very strong. When the crisis happens and, earthquake, whatever, that really community comes. And then, there are better economic facilities and then actions and so on. So lots of positive stuff. So an the opposite side, yes, the shadow, when you look at the all these war criminals, it's very difficult to mention Hitler and then Putin. There is many analysis been done when they grew up, what happened to their life, how did they have formulated their mind. Very tough moment, a very distrustful relationship that has really created the way that they frame situation. So long story short, it is very important that we really focus on, or we treat people, we raise people together in a healthy way, and then always receptive of reflection. Are we doing right? Are we really, bringing people on that totality of an analysis that we are not living alone? Are we too, self-dominating? All that, really having the repertoire of references, and then to make sure that we are using whole different skill set to bring the better, outcomes or better tools. So that is something that I really wanted to make sure that we capture. So well-being, it's really critical. If you're not a healthy mind, you are so stuck and then you blame yourself. No, your healthy mind, that's why it is so, important to focus on the having, wealth of knowledge in a healthy way and apply to impacting others. It's really the starting point of peace building. Make sure that we, in a way that to expand that.
Thank you so much. Well, we are out of time, but I want to just read a couple of the ideas shared by our audience. Small things. It can be as simple as soaking in some extra vitamin D and fresh air, parking away from the entrance to my destination when going someplace in order to get a nice walk, going to the ocean, resting in her embrace, presence in the infinite now, meditative and energetic practices that raise consciousness, frequency, and vibration within, and therefore resonate and expands our collective consciousness. And then we have some words of gratitude. Thank you all so much. And let's just commit to one thing, to build our personal peace and resilience, that peace within, as well as to sort of take the gifts of the individual to contribute to growing peace in another or others or our beloved community. And it's lovely to have you all here, and I hope that you'll join us for our next conversation in this Careers in Peacebuilding series. Thank you so much, Jose. Thank you, Dr. Mariko, and thank you all for your attendance and participation.